NFR.
NFR Extra is a podcast dedicated to the Wrangler National Finals Rodeo and features icons and personalities that embody the Western lifestyle.
Type of guy going into the finals the first time sometimes. And you know, those guys will eat you up, spit you out.
Yeah.
I mean, they just will. I mean, I told him, I said, be yourself and know what got you there. Quit listening to everybody when you get a cold streak and change this, change that, and not know what got you there and stick with it. And everybody said, man, I can't believe you did that. That was so stupid. And it was stupid, but that's my mentality. That's what I wrote for money. And so I never forgot that camp. It cost me a gold buckle, but it is what it is. I was trying to win, but you don't forget those, you just don't. You don't forget them. I don't care who you are.
This is pro rodeo announcer Andy Seiler, and you are listening to NFR Extra. Well, I feel spoiled today because the conversation that we're fixing to enjoy is with one of my idols. And I'm not trying to make him feel old, but the year before I was born was his first year at the National Finals Rodeo. And ever since then, he has had a huge influence on the rodeo world. And we're so pleased to be joined today by Joe Beaver.
Well, you're right. I am old now because I sit around and look and see, the last year I made the national finals, I think I had two guys in there that have been in my clinics roping with me. And I was like, man, it's time you to step out.
Well, selfishly, Joe, I went to one of your clinics when I was growing up. And as a young man at 5'7", and at the time I wasn't 5'7", but, I'll never forget the encouragement that you gave me because I was one of the smaller guys. And, there's a lot of people on the sidelines that don't mind giving you a little extra doubt when you're a small guy, but that was never you. So I appreciate your encouragement.
Hey, man, there's always a silver lining. Just sometimes you got to look for it a little harder, and you know him too. I'll tell you a prime example right now to me is Brody Clemens.
Yes.
Cole's little brother,
Yep.
which is bigger than him now. But I told, Brody for years, he was just so little and he could handle his rope so good and he'd get run over, time and time again. And I told him the other day at my Labor Day junior open, I said, well, all those times you get run over and never quitting, next year they're going to let you run into 10 of them at Vegas.
Yes.
And I really feel that he will. I mean, it's that's what a clinician or a coach or a friend does, Man, they find the positive and they pump you up. There's enough negative in this damn world and enough negative people and enough, downers that you got to be the upper when you can.
Amen to that. And I mean, it's so cool for Brylan and myself now because Cole and Brody have both competed at the Junior World Finals, so I almost feel like it takes a little bit of the nervousness off. But for somebody like Cole, I mean, obviously the NFR has changed quite a bit, but take us back to 1985 and your first time qualifying at the NFR.
I think the biggest difference today is, and you can see this where in your job all the time, but the biggest difference I think is, I don't know that other than a couple that the guys have that, and I don't want to call it a cocky streak or a mean streak or a tough streak, but it's a little bit nicer, softer type of guy going into the finals the first time sometimes. And, those guys will eat you up, spit you out.
Yeah.
I mean, they just will. I mean, it's no different, for everybody coming along. You better, and I told Cole this last night at Invitational roping we had down here in Hempstead, Texas. 25 of the top 25 guys at 15,000 rope for 1,000. You don't just show up there. You belong there.
Right.
And I told him last night, I said, listen, quit listening to everybody that when soon as you go to roping bad, which he had a terrible September, I don't think he got a check. And honestly, maybe he sent from Bremerton, until Stephenville, the last day of the year. And everybody's talking about, he wasn't going to make it. He shouldn't make it, all this BS. But I told him, I said, be yourself and know what got you there. Quit listening to everybody when you get a cold streak and change this and change that, and know what got you there and stick with it. And I think that's the difference in us. And it could have been, what it could have been too? Less these videos, TVs.
Right.
Everybody watching TV wants to call. You know what I mean?
Yes, sir.
I do Sioux Falls, and I get 10 calls a night on somebody needs to change this, somebody needs to do that. First of all,
just jump in there.
I'm not telling them shit because they're there roping, not me.
Right.
But I think maybe that wasn't as much of that. So we went in there, with a little bit more for kind of a straight, hard back, ready to do battle, because nobody was watching us all the time to see how we were getting ready or what worked and what didn't. And I remember, like, my first trip, I remember when I realized I had a maid, I was like, well, man, I got it now, because that's the battle.
Yes,
if you ever make them once, it's a lot easier to make them again. And the first time I made them, that's, I think, the battle I thought was won. And
I think too, Joe, I compare rodeo a lot to golf, because they're more often than not, obviously not the athletic ability, but you're on an island. I mean, and you have some people that you can talk to and that can help you with travel and give you little thoughts here and there to help you with mechanics. But at the end of the day, you have to perform. So there has to be kind of a junkyard dog mentality, because you have to do it. I mean, you can get those tips, but at the end of the day, you have to execute.
Well, you're exactly right. It's just like when you step up there to putt, and you're on the 18th green, and they tell everybody to be quiet, they might as well tell everybody to be screaming their guts out to you, because that might be worse,
Right.
Now I know they're all focusing on me.
Yeah.
And when you back in there, or when you nod your head, when they pull the latch on that bucket chute, it's nobody can help you. And I tell everybody, when you nod your head, you decide whether you break the barrier, whether you miss, whether you catch, whether you mess up. And it's a unique way to make a living, but it's also a very testy way on your mental game, day in and day out.
Are some of these next level opportunities, are they kind of making the big money not as big of a deal? I'm not explaining that well, but
no, you make all sense in the world with that. You dang right. Hey, it's no different. To me, it's like we would have loved, Fred and I was talking about this the other day, and, just not downing and not talking anything about, just reminiscing about, man, would we have loved to got to rope for the money that they get to rope for now?
Right.
So many times a year. I can remember going through the list with John a couple years ago, and him telling me he was going to Elko and somewhere else. And I'm like, John, why are you going to those? They had 2,500. And he said, Joby, they had 10,000 and 12,000. I was like, holy,
Yeah.
I mean, I had no idea. I wasn't keeping up to where there's so much money so many times a year that I think they kind of, rely on, I'm going to be able to win 15,000 here, so it'll be all right. Or I'm going to be able to win 20,000 at the Cup, so it'll be okay. But you better win every time you get a chance for that big money, because if you don't look up, if you don't watch out, you look up, and there the last end of the year is you didn't win that big money.
Absolutely. I have to ask you a little bit about the transition, because when you qualified, you were then welcome to Las Vegas versus Oklahoma. What goes into that change as a contestant when you were like, man, I want to make it to the finals, and then all of a sudden, hey, actually, you're going to Las Vegas?
I think I liked it because I was in the 80s, I was way more Las Vegas lifestyle than I was Oklahoma City. I'm going to tell you right now, Oklahoma City, I mean, it would have been fun, but I don't think it could start the fun we had in Vegas in the 80s. It was when I topped the hill in Henderson, and I've told the story before. First of all, I broke down in El Paso, of all places, trying to get there.
Oh, gosh.
And you had to check in, by a certain time. So I broke down for a couple days in El Paso at this at the station trying to get people to work on my truck. And when I topped the hill to Henderson, I saw all those lights. I said, man, now this is where I belong. This is a Super Bowl rodeo, and I will be here as long as I physically can. Because when you drove into that town, now back then, mind you, it was a lot different. That was their time to take vacations, for the entertainers, and the nice restaurants closed. The chefs were on vacation. They recarpeted, repainted, all that. But partner, we had Ricky and Red Streaks, and we had 2 bars and stayed open all night. And I mean, we had fun in Vegas.
What was Joe B driving through Henderson coming into Vegas in 1985?
And I bought a brand new GMC 450 double cab dually, 4-speed, about May of that year before. So I was still driving it. It was over a year old. I bought it in 84, so that'd have been about a year and a half old. And it would run 100. I got stopped running 128 miles an hour one day on it. But it got 8 miles to the gallon, 4 going and 4 coming. you could run through 100 gallons of gas before a cat could lick his paw.
I mean, going 128.
Yeah, he stopped me and he come up there and he said, do you know how fast you're running? I said, no. He said, no, really? I said, no, really. I go as fast as I can go, and I back off just a little bit. He said, you're on 128. I said, well, no wonder this sun gonna run hot all the time. Shit, I had to put water in that gas truck all the time.
Oh gosh, that's funny.
Oh my goodness.
But I think Vegas was so receptive and welcomed us with open arms so much at that time, because it was such a down period for them that time of year. And I think the rodeo world was looking for something fresh. And I just happened to fall in the cracks and got to enjoy all of it. You know what I mean? I can still remember what's fun for me is I can go back and look at the 80s. I was there 5 or so years. I was there in the 90s, and I was there in the 2000s, 5 or 6 years, all competing, right? And to see Vegas change with the times, it was so impressive because, all of a sudden, man, we were the big gig. The rodeo was the big gig in December. Us in that one convention, was all of December. And to see the people flock to Vegas and start, and I remember when you could still buy tickets, the 2 days before even. Yep. And to see now, the years go by where people came just to shop and just to watch, on TV at the bars now and, and hang it. That's the cool part I've been able to experience with Vegas and the finals. And also, being a part of probably 3 of the greatest greatest all-around champions of all time. I've been able to compete and watch them through Vegas. So, I think Vegas has just done for me what I thought rodeo always would do. I just didn't know if I could get there.
How have you been able to keep that? I mean, going back to when you first qualified to your last qualification in 06, how are you able to keep that spanning over 3 decades?
I think my will to win was just and not just me. I could name you about 10 or 12 guys that I rodeoed with in both ends of the arena and both all events that I think we just had a will to win that was so strong, and we did whatever it took to be victorious when we had the opportunity, that we just continue to win, way past our body. I can say that our bodies shut us down, about 10 of us, that would, if we could have snapped our fingers and been healed, we'd still probably try to make the finals today. But I think when I decided I was going to rope, and that's what I was going to do, and I wanted to make the finals every year I could. I missed them, I think, 3 times, when I was hurt. And then that one year my dad died, I thought I had a made, and I went home and I did. But other than that, I think I wanted to win so bad, and I wanted to be at the top of my game and be at Vegas every year, that there was no question in January. That's what I was going to do. And I said this the other day, and I didn't mean stepping on no toes, but this is how we think different. We as winners, a few guys I could really mention. A lot of people started out, especially used to, oh, we're going to go to the buildings and, see how it goes, or I'm going to go through the spring, and then if it's not good, well, I'm going to go home. Well, we didn't have that thought.
Right.
I didn't have a backup plan. I started in January when they started, and I quit at the Cow Palace when they quit, and then later on, I quit in September when they quit. There wasn't any going to go and see how it goes. I knew how it was going to go. I just had to figure out how to stay sound and make it work.
Burn the ships.
Yes, sir, for sure. And you know what else? I think now, and man, it's great because don't get me wrong, without it, the guys wouldn't make the money they're making.
Right.
But I remember when there weren't any sponsors. And I remember when we first got together, we had an agent, he's dead now, named Sam Applebaum. And he had Ty Charmaine, Jim Sharp, me, Tough, even Tallman, I think, was in the bunch. Jake and Clay. I remember we got together. We started the first team deal getting endorsed, getting sponsors. So to see it come from there to now, listen, you fool around and, work your sponsors, take care of the business, do it right. And what you can win in the arena, you're making money now rodeoing. And I know things are all more expensive. I get it. But I also know how much money that you can win and how much it still costs to go. The guys are having a chance and the girls to really make money. And that's what we all wanted in 1980. Well, I didn't pay no attention the first 3 years, but let's say about 92, when we all started working with this, that's what we were hoping for.
But you're right. You have to be careful because that comfort can become a drug. You get $50,000 or $75,000 in sponsorships before you ever nod your head, and you still have to tell yourself, hey, I still got to go to work.
That's right. And you know what you just said, though? That makes sense. When you get there and you prepared, what is that? That's your job, right?
Right. Yeah.
That's good. That's a contestant's job. And I used to tell them all the time, we'd show up somewhere to be muddy, and I'd be like, I got half the field beat. I'm going to win something here because half the field didn't want to be in the mud, and the other half was about half-assed, weak in the mud, or they didn't give it 100% in the mud. Hey, it didn't matter. My dad used to tell me, if you show up and you're mentally stronger than the rest of them, you've got half of them beat anyway. So if I got there in the mud, or I went to California in the fall and same kids we'd roped in the spring and they weighed 300 with horns, and everybody hated it. Hell, that was easy for me.
Right.
But that was my job. It's like you showing up prepared. It's your job,
Is there something that you look back on in Vegas that, I can think of multiple round wins and guys that you got partnered up with at the NFR and the team roping, but are there a few memories that stick out to you inside the Thomas and Mack?
Oh, yeah, for sure. My dad still says, or did say till the day he died, that the best run I ever made in my life was the first round at the finals the first year when I went around. I run a big black off to the right down there was, I don't know, 2 or 3, and he said that's one of the best runs you ever made because that's a run that was going to decide whether you belonged or not. He said, that run defined you in my books. I knew what you could do. We knew what you could do. Everybody was wondering, and you just kicked the door in and showed them, there. So I guess that was one of them. And then the last round in the finals in the team roping in 2000, when I was trying to beat Scott Johnson for the all-around, and Brett Gould and I won the round, and I reached and stuck it on one, and when he swapped, he just heeled him down. And, can you imagine the pressure right there? It's like that's why I bragged on Andrew Ward so much the other day. Andrew had the finals made it at the Governor's Cup, but Colin didn't. Andrew had to turn those steers like that, So Brett Gould, he set that one down and made it to where all I had to do in the tie-down rope was just come back and hold my spot in the average, and I win all around. That was really special. And then I guess the other one being 96, when I won the all-around, the 10th round, I ran a calf way down there and tied him in 8-8 or 8-something, and let me win around and move up enough. And I think those times. And then the only other one would be, and I can't remember the year, but it's the year Herbert and I were battling out to win the tie-down, and I had caught him and actually was going to pass him. It was the 9th round. All I had to do, I think I was winning the average, winning second, is just tie the last 2 down, win the average, and I had him caught. But I had one of the best ones on him that night. And, like I talked about, roping was my job. And that was whatever it was back then, 11, 12, 13,000. I don't know what it was. But whatever it was, that was my money, I felt like. You know what I mean?
Yes, sir.
And I broke the damn barrier. Should have won the round. And everybody said, man, I can't believe you did that. That was so stupid. And it was stupid, but that's my mentality. That's what I roped for money. And so I never forgot that, Kev. It cost me a gold buckle, but it is what it is. I was trying to win. But you don't forget those, you just don't. You don't forget them. I don't care who you are.
Let's take a quick pause, and we'll be right back. Looking for NFR video content and features? It's all in one place at /Las Vegas NFR. You will find unique features like the top 35 most memorable moments since 1985, the top 60 NFR contestants of all time, NFR champions recaps, custom NFR videos, and much more. You'll also find NFR performance recaps, insider tips, and interviews you might have missed along the way. Once you dive in, you'll find a lot more great content. There's something for all rodeo fans, because legacies and memories are made in Vegas.
I'm going to bring up the house that Joe built and the fact that you are going to be recognized within that building and a banner hung in the Thomas and Mack itself. What does it mean to you to be recognized as a Las Vegas NFR icon?
I told somebody the other day, I think it's the icing on top of the cake. I've had a really good run, and I've baked a really good cake in that building, and I think that's just kind of topping it off. I remember the first year I went, everybody was talking about it. Oh, it's little and there's no place to put horses, but they got tent stalls, and all I could say, I kept thinking to myself, I think the rounds back then paid 7,800. I can't remember what it was. Right at 8,000. I was like, I don't care what it is for that much money. I told him I'd rope in the parking lot. I didn't care. I mean, to me, that was unbelievable. You're talking about a kid that would with the amateur rodeos for 500, back in the day. And I said, man, how can they gripe about this? Well, once I got in there, it was my kind of place, man. It was little and fast and loud and people everywhere. And I thought, boy, this is just it. I hope it never moves. So, I did a lot of morning TV shows for them during the, through the years. I did a lot of news stuff for Vegas through the years in that Thomas and Mack and on the bottom in the arena at 4:30 in the morning when it was cold. And, me and that arena and I have a lot of stuff together. And I think to finally go to the top of it is about as fulfilling as I could ask for in a career in a building that I think everybody was worried about it and everybody was wondering about me. And we just kind of came together and we made a pretty good pack.
Well, you created some awesome memories for all of us, but those continue, Joe. And I want to hear about the start and then how you've continued to evolve as a broadcaster, because the one thing that I love about the way you talk on television is you are unapologetically Joe Beaver.
I had no idea. I didn't know what to do, how to talk on TV or whatever. And I went to a Catholic school and I had an old nun, and she's long gone now, but she told me I had a history speech class with her. And I used to be, wanting to leave, wanting to go rope and do this, that. In homework, a lot of times she'd say, Beaver, you got your stuff done? And I'd be like, I'm working on it. I'd run into class. And she'd say, just get up here and tell us what you're doing. So she'd make me get up there and talk because she knew I hadn't got my stuff done to turn in. And she liked me. And she didn't want to fail me, and she liked my rodeoing and stuff. But so she'd say, I wouldn't just sit down. Beaver, get up here. So I'd get up there and talk and do my deal, whatever. So I think that was kind of like, I was like, okay, I'm going to fall back on that. That's all I know to do, So I did the Cow Palace in 99. Well, then I get back to rodeoing, and I think it was, let's see, '05, when my dad was so sick. I thought I had them made, and I flew home, but just got my rig home. Well, I didn't make them. So Jeff called me, said, come do the finals. And I said, you bet. So I did them then, and then I've done them, I think since I quit in '06. I think I've done them since '07, ever since. At first, I think I wanted to just try to be I'll back up. My dad told me when I first started doing TV, he said, hey, you know what you're watching, but if you can't get the people to understand and enjoy what they're seeing through you talking to them, then you're never going to get them. They're just going to be out there watching. They're going to go get popcorn during the tie down roping or something, He said, so you got to let them enjoy what you're watching, but you got to tell them what they're seeing. Yes, and so I thought, okay, I'm going to just call it like I see it. I've had some hate mail, through the years.
Sure.
People could not hate mail, but people call, man, you got to back off of my kid. He's trying hard. That horse, I said, hey, I didn't say nothing about your kid. I said the horse wasn't no good. And I would get off and get on another one, Or, he's drawing bad and he hadn't had a chance. And I'd be like, hey, they placed on 2 of those Bulldog and steers already. His head catch is not good. Whatever, I try to justify it and not just say, well, whatever, But I think I enjoy that part of it, and because it makes it fun for me to try to get the people to enjoy what they're watching, whether they're winning or losing, and also little backstories. I try to keep enough in the rodeo world, I go like to the Southeast Circuit, or
sure.
Last year I went to Canada hanging out, and I go Great Lakes. I go around enough to try to keep fresh of what's changing and what's going on, and see the guys enough to know, what I'm talking about.
Well, and I think you're spot on. And I think the advice you got from your father is also, that's dead to rights, because, I always try to frame it as, why does what I'm seeing right now matter?
That's right.
Yep. Why does this run, this moment, and again, the people that are listening, they have to know the difference between a 7-1 and a 9-1, or a 67 and an 87, yep. and that's our job to communicate that.
And I think Vegas has been so good for that in one aspect. And they've always talked about, and you've heard it since you were probably a kid, need a bigger venue, need to build a bigger venue, more people. Right. Listen, it's easier to sell when it's close right in front of the public that bought the ticket, and that camera covers everything within that area too. It's easy I think it's an easier sell. It's a hard sell at Houston and Cheyenne and Salinas. Yep. Because you got, a vast area of things to cover in a short period of time to make people understand what they're watching.
Well, not just that. That show goes so fast too, and everything, it's one of the few rodeos where you have 15 in every event, and you still want people to leave wanting a little bit more. So you got a lot of stuff to do in a little more than a 2-hour time frame.
I think, used to be, it was a really, really big deal. You know what I mean? Time-wise, because they wanted you outside. Back in the first TV, in the early 90s and early 2000s, it was still. Now I think it could go 4 hours. It wouldn't matter, because every is full. Every restaurant is full. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They're not rushing you out to that empty casino or empty bar anymore. They're already full. So, but the time deal is so important with the production of that rodeo. But it also, I think it makes the rodeo it makes it a little special, because, like you said, if you've never been there, when you sit down inside the Thomas and Mack and that rodeo starts, hey, it seems like just a snap of the fingers and it's over. And they run a lot of people through there.
That is a fact.
Oh, it absolutely does. It's almost like you give clinics 24/7 on TV, but I want you to highlight the actual clinics that you do throughout the year for our youth and those competing in the rodeo world. The
clinics started for the first year I won it. I did one a year, and it was fun. I did Thanksgiving here at my house for, I think, 20 years maybe. And then, I guess about 15 years ago or longer, it's been longer than that now, 25 years ago, I guess, I started doing them everywhere. And I had a clinic booked, and I can't remember, it was somewhere in Mississippi, I think, because I flew into New Orleans to get a car. But anyway, it was in the fall, and back then they had this, the Wrangler World of Rodeo bonuses. And I remember Lewiston, Idaho was one of the last ones. And I was like, first or second, maybe right there battling out for the bonus deals. So I decided I'm in Lewiston. I'll just go up there. It was back then, it was 2 in the slack, and they had 2-person short dough, or you could get, the slacks. So I got entered. I got them both in the slack. I'm going to fly up there. I'm just going to run 2, give me some extra points, for that deal. And then I'll fly down there and do that school. So I go up there, and I don't know, my lucky ass, probably, I won like second and first round and maybe second or third in the second round. So I'm like, hey, I'm second high call, I may have to think this out and just stay here. So they had the old hotel, the Red Line. We used to all stay at the Red Line. And I remember, back then they'd have phones like in a booth where you could just dial, regular numbers, And my mom had an 800 number, so people would call her. She had 800 number forever for all our guys I rodeo with could call at 800 numbers and check in or see what's up or what. So she had it like a secretary. She had an 800 number. So I was shooting pool, and I picked that phone up, called 800, and just went to, and my dad answered. So I was bull crapping him, and he's talking, hey, what'd you do? Where you at? And all that. I said, I'm Lewiston, Idaho, and it was, I roped on Wednesday and Thursday, I think, or Tuesday, Wednesday. And this was Friday. And he said, man, I thought you had this was Thursday. He said, I thought you had a clinic somewhere in Louisiana, Mississippi. I said, well, I do. I said, but man, here's the deal, this bonus rodeo, blah, blah, blah. I gave all my excuses for flying up there. And then I said, I'm winning, I think I was winning third, fourth, whatever. I said, man, if I stay, and do good in the short going average, I could get that Wrangler World, bonus kind of locked up. And, I'm just talking. All of a sudden, he's just quiet. I'm like, you there? Hello, it's got a cell phone today. I said, you there? And he said, yeah, I'm here. And I said, well, what's up? He said, I'm going to tell you something you need to remember. And I said, what's that? He said, you're not going to be able to rope for a living forever. He said, and your clinics are going really good. And he said, parents aren't going to forget, and kids aren't going to forgive. And he said, you cancel that school if you want to. But he said, don't bitch when next year you try to book a school somewhere over there and they said, oh, that guy don't show up. So this is Thursday about 4 o'clock, about 5 beers into pool games, and I have to rope till Saturday night. Well, that shit gets to bothering me, and I get to thinking about it that night. And, back then now, we're talking about you couldn't just fly in and out of Lewiston like you can now. Right. You had to go to Spokane, and then jump, So I call and call, and I leave there Friday morning. I drive that night or next morning to Spokane. I fly from Spokane to somewhere to New Orleans. I get to New Orleans about 10 o'clock that night. Get me a rent car, go to that clinic, turn out in the short go, or the last one, go to that clinic. And I got there like at 4 in the morning. But I had that clinic for I can't remember, 12 or 13 years. So I think that set me in motion back then to say, you know what? And he also said something else. He said, if somebody's going to pay you to come to your clinics, he said, you be dang sure and try to get them to be as good as they can be. He said, if they come there and they can only ride a horse or swing a rope, get them to catch one. If they come there and they're tying them in 8, make sure they tie one in 7 before they leave. So I think he made it a point that I realized, you know what, this is important and this could go somewhere. And I honestly, other than Walt Woodard, I think probably he and I are and maybe Jake and Clay, they don't do many anymore, but we made this 20, 30 years of clinics now.
Well, the other thing too that you just touched on, I stepped out of my comfort zone this year and I'm coaching flag football. And I can promise you these kids have taught me more about myself than I've taught them anything. But
isn't that fun though?
It is, because you're exactly right, Joe, because there's some kids that 6 weeks ago could barely catch a football. But to watch them make a play in a game. Now, are they going to the NFL? Absolutely not. But, to watch their eyes light up and the confidence that they get because they themselves are starting to believe and they can see that progression. I think it changes us more than it changes them, if that's possible.
Man, 100%. And I'll tell you this, I did the same thing. My nephew played football, wound up playing high school big time, went to college, but Brody and him decided they were going to play flag football one year. I flew back and forth. I bet you every week, if I could get to a Red House Saturday night, I was home. They on Friday night. They played Saturday mornings, and I got more out of that, I think, than the kids did, because here I was. They didn't know I played football, in junior high or whatever, but I liked it, and I enjoyed the kid part of it more than anything, and they didn't realize that. That carried over. That kind of stuff is what made my broadcasting stay solid, and I worked for Don and then for a good while, helping Wyatt. And he told me one time, he said, look, your voice and your commentary is you. Don't change. Have something that makes you unique, So I think that's what I decided. I was going to stick to what worked and just keep doing it.
Well, Joe, we really appreciate it. This has been an awesome visit, maybe one of the best conversations that we've had. So I appreciate your time, and we look forward to seeing you when we all get together in Vegas.
Thank you. It was really good. Thomas and Mack has been good to me, and I enjoy it. But so I got to say one other thing, and you can leave this on there, or you could probably cut it off and call me.
We'll leave it.
Huh?
We'll leave it.
I don't know if you can leave it.
All right, we'll find out. Let's hear it.
I want to say that if I gathered up 3 young announcers to throw in that booth up there, and I think change is needed, and always in anything we do, that you'd be right in the middle of my 3 picks.
Well, I really appreciate that, Joe.
Want to experience more of the NFR? Then visit nfrexperience.com, and we invite you to subscribe to NFR Extra on Apple Podcast, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and wherever you're listening right now. If you like what you've heard on NFR Extra, we would love it if you gave us a 5-star rating and tell your friends how to subscribe.